Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name's Erika T. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the campaign director for the Action Center on Race and the Economy. I've also been a STOMP steering committee member for almost 2 years, and I'm super honored to get to be emceeing tonight's program. Thank you all for joining us. I hope that the end of the year has been treating everyone well, and it's great to see that we're approaching 100 folks on the call so far, and it's growing. And yeah, I'm excited for you to hear from our incredible lineup of speakers who are going to share with you about how our current political landscape is impacting our fight to stop Wall Street's flow of money to oil, gas, and coal projects, and how you can take action with all of us on Wall Street tonight and throughout 2023. So before we dive into our speaker program, we are opening up this event by grounding us in a brief land and labor acknowledgement. And I'll start with you all by sharing that I'm joining this call from stolen Gabrieleño land. Others may know this land as Tongva, Keech, and Gabrieleño, or so-called Los Angeles. And as we're beginning today's event, we must recognize the history of colonization, genocide, broken treaties, and forced relocation by the United States government of Native peoples all across Turtle Island. We must also recognize that Native peoples are still here and are here to stay, with more than 600 sovereign nations living within the borders of the US alone. And we know that federal and state governments, as well as corporations and other entities, continue to violate treaties and challenge the sovereignty of these independent nations every day. We also must acknowledge the legacy of enslavement in this country and the enslaved African people whose forced labor was exploited for generations to establish the wealth and foundation of the United States. And it is only by recognizing and understanding these atrocities that white settlers and enslavers committed as part of our country's origin story that we can even begin to repair past harm and to prevent them from being committed in the future. So as I'm closing out, please remember that land and labor acknowledgements are an initial step to understand and to work towards liberation and autonomy, but we should all be striving to take action that goes beyond acknowledgement. And so with that, I'm dropping in a link to the chat with resources that Indigenous leaders have compiled that really detail specific practices that we can all take to go further beyond land and labor acknowledgement. I strongly encourage everyone to check out the resource and to reflect on actions you can take in your community, and promise that that link is coming through shortly. Let's see. All right. And now I'm going to transition us into the rest of the program and hand it off to Arielle, STOMP's campaign manager for our bank's campaigns, to ground us in this current political moment. Arielle, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Erika, for opening us up. I'm so excited to be here with folks tonight. I want to talk to you just really briefly about the political moment that we're in. Where are we in the climate movement? Where are we in the climate finance movement? What are the challenges and opportunities that we're facing? So right now, we have recently seen the passage of the ACRE, which is the biggest piece of climate legislation that has ever passed in US history. It's still an extremely flawed piece of legislation. It falls short and leaves a lot of frontline communities behind. So we're in a complicated moment legislatively as we see the shift coming off of the midterms. Federal action is going to become more challenging in some ways in terms of trying to achieve our climate goals through federal legislation. We also see, with the divided Congress, we also see red states trying to create climate culture wars. particularly around climate finance work, which is what we do here. So they're threatening, or in some cases are pulling money out of financial institutions that have ESG, environmental, social, or governance policies, or have made moves to reduce fossil fuel funding, even when these same institutions are still funding fossil fuel expansion and have not really made a lot of moves to actually reduce the amount of money they send to fossil fuels. But some of our Wall Street targets are, again, using this as an excuse for inaction, but it also provides us with an opportunity to really push back. We have, in geopolitical context, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is causing fuel shortages in Europe, especially headed into the winter. Instead of this being a wake-up call about the disasters and dangers of relying on fossil fuel companies and big bank CEOs like Jamie Dimon from Chase are saying this is a reason that we need to extract more oil and gas. So it's really important that we as a movement are pushing back against that, providing a vision of an alternate future where this is one of the things that helps us move towards a just transition. Also, in the global context, we just came out of COP, which is a global meeting of countries and other interests to talk about what we're doing as a globe on climate. One of the things that came out of that was an agreement for a loss and damage fund, which is a fund for vulnerable countries, mostly countries in the global south that are on the front lines of climate disaster. But on the other hand, there was no agreement on a complete phase down of fossil fuels. That is something that is baseline necessary for us to have a livable future, for us to be within 1.5 degrees. So in any case, there's a lot of things that are happening. And while all this is happening, the climate crisis is accelerating. We've got hurricanes, we've got heat waves, we've got fires. We're going to hear more about that later in this call. But this is the kind of complicated political, geopolitical, locally political, nationally political context that we find ourselves in, and what we're navigating as we continue our work to stop fossil fuel expansion and build a more just and sustainable future. With that, I'll pass it back to Erika. Thank you.
Thanks, Arielle. I think I am going to hand it over to Ruth now to talk about why we need to push hard on Wall Street to stop funding fossil fuels in this moment. Ruth?
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Erika, and thanks, Arielle. Hey, folks, my name is Ruth Breech. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior campaigner at Rainforest Action Network. We've been working on this area of climate justice and finance, or climate finance. And when we say Wall Street, we're talking about all the financial institutions. So that means the banks, that means the insurance companies, that means asset managers, that means pension funds. So all the different areas in our society where that money is going, because we're looking at those financial institutions, which we call Wall Street. We know a lot of them are headquartered in New York City. And that work and that money is a key pillar of support for climate destruction. They are funneling billions of dollars into fossil fuel companies. And that's part of the work that we're carrying. We're saying, no, we're going to stop this money pipeline right now. You have to stop fossil fuel expansion. We have to honor human rights. And in this transition into a just transition, we have to end the fossil fuel expansion so that we can move forward together. What we're seeing is the fossil fuel companies, as well as deforestation companies, they need money for their projects. So whether it's a pipeline or clearing a forest, they need capital to make that happen. We're seeing a huge proposed build out around what's called liquefied natural gas, or LNG, or methane gas, because there's nothing natural about this gas. It's happening right now on the Gulf Coast and internationally. And these export terminals from the US, and they're happening all over the world, they cost anywhere from 3 to 30 billion based on how big the projects are. And they need that capital up front. So these energy companies like Exxon or Chevron, they need that money up front. And they're getting those billions of dollars from the banks through loans or through bonds or the capital market. So we're looking at all those different ways that we can be following the money and then also intervene to stop that flow of money. So there's been some incredible frontline resistance, which you'll hear about today from communities on the ground that are directly impacted by the issues, incredible grassroots actions. I'm curious if folks want to put in the chat if you have thrown down or shown up or taken action on a Wall Street financial institution, so a bank, asset manager, insurance company, a pension fund. If you can put an emoji or an asterisk or a plus in the chat, want to see, I think we're running in good company, but just want to affirm that together. All right. Okay, I see you. Awesome. So many opportunities here, and it has really been this creative campaigning and the leadership coming from communities all over the country. And this really kind of what we've done is really built this powerful movement together that has literally only been growing. So really appreciate you taking the courage to join this call tonight. I know there's like 1,000 things going on right now in this season, but really being present to be here to take on Wall Street, because they got big money, folks, but we got big hearts and we got big power because we have people power. So that's part of the work that we're going to carry on through this work together. We have to stop the flow of money, and that's how we're going to stop the flow of fossil fuels. And that's how we're going to get to the world that we want to see, that respects human rights and where fossil fuels are not going to be damaging and continuing climate destruction. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Ruth, for that crystal clear assessment of how Wall Street is funding environmental racism and climate chaos. And thank you so much for your call to action. And that is a perfect segue into our first action together this evening. So as many of you know already, I'm sure, communities across the Gulf South are facing an unprecedented build out of methane oil and gas export terminals, with over 25 new projects that are being proposed. These are export terminals that are going to exacerbate existing industrial pollution in local communities of color, threaten our ability to meet domestic and international climate goals, and we know they're going to increase energy costs in the US and cause irreparable damage to the Gulf Coast ecosystem. And just take a guess, who is making this build out possible? Feel free to drop in the chat who you think is behind this. All right, well, if it's on your minds that it could be Wall Street banks, then you guessed right. Wall Street banks have poured over $139 billion into dangerous methane gas projects since 2016. And yes, Sarah, Citibank alone pumped over $8.6 billion into the world's top methane gas companies and projects, making the bank the second largest methane gas financer in the world. Meanwhile, Gulf communities are facing more and more intense hurricanes, torrential flooding, severe drought, and growing risks of explosion from these dangerous terminals. So this is why we need to take action right now to demand that Citibank stop financing these devastating projects. As Ruth was outlining, without financing, these terminals can't be built. So that's why we're calling on everyone to take 1 minute to sign the petition that was being dropped in the chat earlier, so we can send a collective message to Citibank's leadership that it has to stop financial services for all methane gas companies and all fossil fuel financing. Please take a look. Thank you. Yeah, feel free to drop an emoji or write done in the chat when you sign the petition. Loving the confirmation. Thank you. All right. So folks, please keep doing that while I'm giving you a little background on our second action. So I am also calling on everyone here to support Regenerating Paradise today. In case you're not familiar with Regenerating Paradise, this is an organization that formed in the wake of the Camp Fire in California to help the community rebuild and recover from that fire. You'll get to hear a lot more about the impact of the Camp Fire on the Paradise community later from a really powerful speaker in the program. But for now, really want to encourage everyone to take a minute to support Regenerating Paradise. The org is supporting the community with rebuilding by facilitating quarterly day-long gatherings, of Ridge community members and activists. They're also supporting organizations focused on rebuilding with grant writing, fundraising assistance, public relations, and so much more. So if you are in a financial position to donate, please join us and take a moment now so that you can contribute to this important cause. And I promise you'll get to hear from an amazing speaker later on about this organization. All right, so we'll give folks a couple of minutes. Again, once you've taken action, feel free to drop an emoji in the chat or simply write done. All right. In the interest of time, seeing lots of great affirmations in the chat. Appreciate that. Thank you for donating. Thank you for signing, and keep it coming. So I am going to tee us up with our next speaker, who is a Hurricane Sandy survivor and a climate justice powerhouse from an amazing organization that I've got deep respect for, New York Communities for Change. Please give a warm welcome to Rachel Rivera, and I'm going to hand it over to you now, Rachel.
Hi, good evening. Again, my name is Rachel Rivera. I am part of New York Communities for Change. I am one of the leaders for climate activism. Talk about me, per se, a little backstory. About 10, 11 years now, I am a Hurricane Sandy survivor. And that night, normal night, nothing happening, seeing the news about the Sandy coming in. As I'm listening to the news, I also hear a cracking noise in the background. I got scared. I go to the bedroom where my daughter was sleeping, and I took her out of the bed. As soon as I took her out of the bed, the ceiling caved in. We lost everything. All I had on was a tank top and shorts. My daughter at the time was 5. All she had was her pajamas and a blanket. Mind you, it was cold and raining. And we lost everything. I almost lost my daughter's life. She is now 16. She suffers from PTSD. So do I. And this is a new thing for us. This is my real life. And I fight and I do all this for my kids' future, because if they continue doing this fracking and fossil fuels, burning it, we're not going to have an earth. Neither will my kids, neither will anybody's kids, grandkids, so on and so forth. Moving forward, I have an 8-year-old little girl. She suffers respiratory seizures, meaning if it's too hot, if it's too cold, she will have an asthma attack that would trigger her seizure. She would stop breathing and I could lose her. And that's because of the climate. And it's always a everyday battle for me, especially now in New York. If you go outside, you see how cold it is. And I worry that would it trigger her asthma to cause a seizure. This is my everyday. When it rains really hard, now we're talking about my 16-year-old. When it rains really hard, I will have to take my 16-year-old to the hospital because her PTSD and anxiety is through the roof. We can't control her, and we have to find a way to sedate her for her to calm down. I battle with this every day. For the anniversary of Sandy, I risked arrest. I got arrested to show these banks there's people like me that live in areas that's not supposed to be flooded. It's not no hurricane supposed to come to New York. And it happened. And if they continue this way, it's going to continue happening and it's going to get worse. And I'm always fighting, not for myself. but for my kids. They need a future. They need something that these political people from these banks and everything else need to realize. Once they're gone, they can't take their money with them. So why continue funding something that's destroying our planet? And it's just a lot for me, and I continue to fight, and I will always continue going to Wall Street and letting them know to stop funding the fossil fuel. We need to get off of it and realize that us frontliners, I am a person of minimum needs on a fixed income with 6 kids, live in Brooklyn, New York, that everything is expensive. I can't just up and go or relocate when there's a storm coming in, getting flooded out, worried about what's gonna happen to my kids next, what's gonna happen in the future. I can't lie to my 16-year-old no more about if we could get flooded. I'm worried about my 8-year-old stepping outside and I can't get her back because she gets a seizure. This is my real life, and this is why I fight again. And I want people to realize that they're not alone. I'm one of the frontliners. I live through it every day, and I will continue living through it every day, and I will continue fighting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing your story and sharing your family's story, and for reminding us that we have to continue to fight and continue to organize and continue to protest. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Hey, my name is Austin, and I am Stop the Money Pipeline's digital manager. I'm going to take the mic from Rachel, and I'd love to tell you a little bit more about a project that Stomp is working on. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. What I'm here tonight to talk to you about is an exciting project that we just launched this week that I've been working on. And we at Stomp have created a new resource on the Stop the Money Pipeline website, and that is a local group partner map. So our goal of this partner map is to be a map that activists can use to find and connect with Stomp coalition partners who are organizing in your city or your region. We hope that this map will help Stomp coalition partners who are doing local place-based organizing to be able to connect with new volunteers and activists in their communities. And our theory of change behind this is that we want to support more people getting involved in climate movement work where they live, where you live. And we hope to additionally support groups that are running campaigns on the institutions that we love to target, and that are the institutions that are funding climate chaos. So this map is new, and right now we're just building it out. We officially launched it this week, but I'm excited to continue to grow it and improve it into 2023 and beyond. So my colleagues are going to put into the chat some links, but if you are a Stomp coalition partner and you would like to be added to the partner map, we're going to drop the link in the chat. And if you have any questions or mapping expertise or suggestions on how to improve this map, you can email me, and I'm going to put my email in the chat. But right now I'm going to stop screen sharing. And what I would like to do is show you the actual map on our website and tell you about some quick tips that I recommend on how to get the most out of the map. So let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the map? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So when you go to the link that is going to be dropped in the chat, the map looks like this. But let me tell you some quick tips that I recommend, so how you can find an organization near you. So when you get here, my first recommendation is to click this button to go full screen, so you can have a nice large view of the map. So as you see, we have a local partner map where you can find organizations that are near you, and you can find their contact information. And we recommend that you sign up to get involved with them if you aren't already. So let me just tell you about these buttons here. You can use these buttons to zoom in and out on the map. And I do just want to shout out our international partners that are here on the map. It's not just US partners. Right now, we also have a group in Paris and a group in Sierra Leone. So shout out to our international partners and activists who are on this call tonight. So the other tip I just want to tell you about is you can search here. If you want to search the name of your city or your state, you can use this magnifying glass here, but you can also use geolocation and click this button over here that centers the map on your location. So I just clicked that. It'll take a second. And I live in Washington, D.C. So it just zoomed in and showed a little blue dot here that shows me which group is active in Washington, D.C. And I can go ahead and click on that, and I can see that the Union of Concerned Scientists is active in D.C. And they have a lot of links here on how to get in contact, actions, opportunities that volunteers can take. You can sign up if you're a scientist, an engineer, health professional. You can sign up on their science network. And they also have a teams-based organizing initiative. So these are all, this is just one plot point on this map. You can see we have a lot right now, but now I'm going to transition us into taking action. And I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I would like everyone to go to the chat and look to see if you can find your local STOMP partner on the map where you live. So let me paste that in the chat one more time. And if you don't see a local group on your map where you live, don't fret. We're still adding partners to this map. Right now, I've only mapped about 30 groups, and we have over 200 groups in the STOMP Coalition. So we have a ways to go in making sure that this map reflects the geographic diversity of our movement. So if you know of a group that is a STOMP partner and isn't on the map but should be, have their organizer get in contact with me, and I'll put my email in the chat. Thanks. And I think that's it for me. But if you find your local partner in the map, I would love for you to put done in the chat. Thanks. And now I will pass the mic.
Thanks, Austin. This is such an incredible resource. And I think, as I saw others saying in the chat, long awaited, and I think will absolutely help us better coordinate our work across geographies. And yeah, just thank you so much for your work to get that launched. With that, I'm going to tee up our next speaker by handing it back over to Ruth to talk to us about shareholder season and ways that folks can take action around that time frame.
All right. Thanks, Erika. And thanks, Austin. Such an awesome resource. And thanks for all your work in putting that together. We've got one more slide to move forward to, and we're going to talk about shareholder season, which is this super wonky thing, but it is this opportunity that we have every year. And it's like on the calendar where we get this like glimpse of like insight and access into these huge financial institutions. And these are, it's a really, really important time. Some of us like plan our calendars around it. You know, it's like shareholder season. It's its own season. It usually starts from about April. So last year we called it Super Tuesday. There was 4 shareholder meetings of the big banks on one day. Pre-pandemic, this used to be an incredible opportunity to get folks like like Rachel, so frontline leaders having direct access to people like the CEO, to the board of directors and major shareholders. So since the pandemic has happened, a lot of the shareholder meetings have gone online, and the companies really control like who gets to speak and how often. So as I mentioned before, we're part of this incredible creative movement, and people have been thinking about all the ways that we can influence what's happening, sometimes without even being in the room. And so a lot of times we're thinking about shaping what's happening prior to it. And I have some examples in just a minute, but why this is an important glimpse is a lot of times we're getting the annual report. We're seeing like what the actual transactions are. This can be like the receipts for what the company, the bank was financing that year, or the asset manager of the insurance company or the pension fund. A lot of times there's some like bullshit CEO letter too. So that can be an opportunity to have some back and forth in the media, like, nuh-uh, nuh-uh, and like really get to like kind of like name them and call them out in a really public way. And that can be a strong way to like communicate in our campaigns. Also, there's this thing called a voting proxy. It's essentially like a voting, like a ballot. So you get your ballot in the mail and it kind of tells you all of the issues that are going to be voted on. That's what it is. What companies do is they release this about 6 weeks ahead of the meeting, and it will have all of the things that will be voted on, and it has those resolutions. We work with this incredible network of brilliant people that will work to actually write the resolutions, and then they have to go through this very rigorous process before it comes on the ballot or the proxy. And what we've done over the last couple of years is starting to get climate and the climate emergency on these voting ballots or these proxies. And just last year, all of the major banks had on their ballot or proxy was around ending fossil fuel expansion. So that was a huge kind of piece there. And we also had 2 banks that had indigenous rights resolutions. So really kind of coupling that both fossil fuels and human rights as a critical piece to be thinking about. We're also on the proxies or the ballots, they're voting board of directors. I mean, this is usually like rubber stamped every year, and sometimes we'll be able to challenge those publicly, and just even that challenge can create like shockwaves. A couple of years ago, in the first year of the pandemic in 2020, the Incredible Coalition, as Stop the Money Pipeline had just launched, we decided to put pressure on JP Morgan Chase's their lead director. He was the head of the board of directors, was Lee Raymond, the former CEO of ExxonMobil. Boo. Like single-handedly like stopped the Kyoto Protocol. So this guy is like a climate villain, and he had been on the board for over 30 years. And so we were actually calling out his climate pieces, but we were also calling out his governance. Like, you're not supposed to be on the board for 30 years. And we saw that he was heavily influencing the CEO, Jamie Dimon. So we wanted to remove that relationship. And while he still got approved on his vote, it was like 20% people voted no against him. And that was enough to make it like an embarrassment. And he stepped down later that year. So just some really creative tactics that folks are pushing through on what's happening. And that, again, that shareholder season will be coming up, and it'll start in April and it'll extend till about June. And it will have like meetings all through that there. Another important date to put on your calendar, circle it, put stars next to, is March 29th. The annual Banking on Climate Chaos report will be coming out. Again, I'm a banks campaigner, so I'm super biased here. But this is a great resource that like grassroots leaders, frontline folks, you can go to that website, Banking on Climate Chaos, and you can list like who is financing Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline. And you can like literally put Enbridge in, and you'll see all the banks that are financing them. Who's financing, Erika was talking about earlier, the methane gas terminals or the LNG, and you can say who's financing the LNG sector, and you can see that Morgan Stanley and Citibank and Bank of America are in that mix. So absolutely bookmark this resource. It's a great one to come back to. And then just the next slide, and I'll wrap up here real quick. I wanted to share with you just some of the super rad stuff that happens on the ground. Again, just some really great work in New York with the NYC comptroller, actually kind of making recommendations on those votes. There's a huge get out the vote for the shareholder resolutions process that happens, and some really incredible people leading that work. There was this super hardcore action at Citibank. The folks are in the lobby there, and they like literally shut down the headquarters. Loving this. Evan Greenberg is the CEO at Chubb, the insurance company. And folks had these electronic billboards and they were rolling around his house. And he actually commented that he saw them and he needed to get a new route for his commuting. And up in the corner was our beloved crew with the Youth Climate Finance Alliance. And they were doing an action at JP Morgan Chase last year for their shareholder meeting. So this is just an incredible movement that is really taking this like key moment to have interventions and like key accountability. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Lasoff, who's doing some kick-ass work for Customers for Climate Justice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ruth. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Lasoff. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a campaign manager at Stop the Money Pipeline on Cowlitz, Clackamas, and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in so-called Portland, Oregon. And I have been really excited and focused on getting customers to advocate for climate justice at their bank. And Customers for Climate Justice is part of our coalition and a campaign that we ran on behalf of our coalition that empowers Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Citibank customers to advocate for climate justice at their bank. But that is not the only campaign we're going to talk about tonight. In a second, I'm going to pass it over to Deborah at Third Act that's also organizing customers to take action. So if you are a customer of one of these banks, this section is for you. So far, customers have taken incredible strides in the past year in our coalition. Tens of thousands of customers have signed on to letters to their bank CEOs. Thousands have sent emails and made phone calls and commented. Hundreds have commented on banks' greenwashing LinkedIn posts. And some have even gone in person to banks to meet with branch managers, talk to them about their climate concerns, and ask bank branch managers to pass up those concerns along to their supervisors. So together, customers by the thousands have been demanding that their bank stops financing fossil fuels and deforestation. And this kind of customer advocacy has really grown our movement. It's given activists new tactics to try on. It's educated tons of customers and bank staff, including branch managers, a few regional managers, and the head of consumer banking and the head of sustainability at Citibank. And coming soon, customers, a group in the Bay Area is actually going to be meeting with the head of sustainability at Wells Fargo. So customers have been able to directly communicate and educate bank staff about their concerns and about our demands, and demand that these banks stop financing climate chaos. And next year, we're going to be continuing to support local customer campaigns and support folks in meeting with branch managers. So if you're a customer of one of these top 4 fossil fuel financing banks, these are the top banks in the US that are providing the most financing to the fossil fuel industry. If you are one of these customers, you can sign up customersforclimatejustice.com and advocate for climate justice at your bank. However, with that said, even after all of this incredible organizing that customers have pulled off, banks have still not budged on their targets. We need them to do better. And that's why we are also asking customers to participate in some new escalations and strategies to put pressure on these bad banks, as well as supporting better banks. So to put pressure on the dirty banks, we are asking folks to pledge and threaten to collectively move their money out of the bad banks if the banks won't move their money out of fossil fuels. We want to up the ante and all together during a National Day of Action on March 21st, 2023, 321, 123. Another date to put in your calendar along with March 29th. And so if you are a customer, you can pledge to move your money, you can actually move your money, or you can symbolically move your money. Moving your money can look like a lot of things. It could look like opening up a card with a green bank, moving a large chunk of money out of a checking account, symbolically cutting up a credit card, or deciding to stop using your credit card with a climate chaos financing bank. We want as many folks as possible participating in this day. And ultimately, we are going to need everybody. We're going to need all the customers to win. We're going to need both strategies to win. So wherever you are at as a customer, there's a place for you to get involved. You can sign up for customersforclimatejustice.com, or you can participate in this pledge and pledge to move your money. And now I'm going to pass it over to Deborah Moore at Third Act, who's going to talk more about the incredible organizing that they're doing to get folks to pledge to move their money and participate in this National Day of Action next year.
Awesome. Well, you said it all so well, Sarah. Thank you. My name is Deborah Moore. I go by she, her. I'm a campaign strategist at Third Act, and I'm on Ohlone land in so-called Berkeley, California. And we are just a really grateful partner and coalition member, part of Stop the Money Pipeline. And as Sarah said, you know, we need to build on all these incredible actions and really flex our financial power muscles. Third Act is a new organization. We just had our 1-year anniversary, and our particular focus is on organizing Americans 60 and up, age 60, who happen to hold 70% of the wealth in the US. So whether that's right or wrong, we want older folks, but also younger folks to get involved with this campaign. And so our campaign is called Banking on Our Future. And as Sarah said, the pledge, part of why it's upping the ante is not just to express our concerns to the banks and ask for meetings and all of that, of course, which is important, but really to threaten, you know, the power that we have and the money that we have. And the other timing of this 3-2-1-2-3 is it's leading into shareholder season, like you heard about in the Banking on Climate Chaos report. So we're going to have a lot of different escalations from now until March 21st. So signing the pledge is one. And the pledge is a pledge. You know, we're not like totally holding you to it, but we do want people to actually move their money. So step number 2 is to get a new credit card. It's not that hard. I'm seeing in the chat lots of people, hey, I already moved my money. There are a lot of resources on the thirdact.org website, also on Stop the Money Pipeline, Green America. So I can put some of those in the chat. So that's step number 2, is to get a new credit card. And step number 3 is to show up on March 21st with your actual credit cards, you know, in hand, or cardboard ones and art. We're going to have art. We're going to have all kinds of things. And we're looking for amazing distributed actions, large and small, in front of banks, but also suburban banks. You know, folks in San Francisco and New York, the bank folks, they're used to these big actions. What if it was like Walnut Creek, California, or, you know, Casper, Wyoming, or, you know, somewhere really unusual all across the country, as well as we already have some folks who are going to cut up credit cards on coral reefs underwater. And what about in Paradise, fire ravaged Paradise, or New York, hurricane ravaged New York, or in Florida? So we want people all over making the connection between banks and climate chaos and climate impacts. And that's like this exclamation moment for our campaign, but it doesn't stop there. It's going to continue on to the actions that you already heard about on the rest of the call. So we look forward to your pledges, your new cards, and seeing you on 3-2-1-2-3. And I'm passing it back to Sarah.
Yeah, so I think we have just a minute to actually take action. So if we could pull up those links once more, I just want to give folks 1 minute to click into them, sign up for Customers for Climate Justice, sign the pledge, check out the National Day of Action, click into those links if you're a customer, and get involved with us next year. It's going to be a really exciting shareholder season, and there are tons of folks who are already involved. And the more folks that we have involved, the more pressure we can put on the banks. And so, yeah, just really looking forward to next year and seeing you all on this day. And I'm going to pass it over to Erika.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for the roundup of all the great actions. Hope everyone is signing pledges and ready to keep taking action after you hear from our last speaker, who's Alan Myers from Regenerating Paradise. Previewed him earlier. So now, after much anticipation, I'm going to hand the mic over to our last speaker. Alan, it's all over to you.
Thanks, Erika. Hi, everybody. I can't stress enough how important it is that you are on this call. You are the advocates that we need. There is 102 out there, and what you're doing by showing up tonight is huge. And I know that you're organizing out there. I know that you're doing the hard work every single day, but let me tell you, in Paradise, we're not able to. We're not able to because there's many of us that are still just trying to meet our basic needs after disaster, after a climate-driven disaster. So you all being our advocates is so important. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to share my screen and give a little presentation if that's okay. Can you see that all right? Thumbs up, thank you. All right. Oh, wait. Presenter view, that's what I want. Okay. There we go. So I grew up in a small mountain community, Paradise, California, and it is famous now in ways that it never was before. Before I could go and say that I was from Paradise and people think I was joking, and now I say that name and the, you know, the look on people's faces of sadness. It's a small mountain community. Is this thing blocking our view? This thing over here, it looks good. Okay. Thanks. In the western facing Sierras, predominantly conservative, and people hear about Paradise and they think it's a small mountain town. Well, it was 26,218 people before the fire. On the day of the fire, 50,000 people were displaced, sent around the state and around the country. Many of them have yet to return because they have not been able to. It's where I grew up, me and my family. On the eastern side of town, on the Feather River Canyon, grew up fly fishing, playing with friends in the mountains and the rivers there. And we all knew that fire was a risk there. But in my lifetime, I have watched the climate change where the threat of fire, of a small fire coming through, has changed. It's just not the same anymore. These are mega fires that are being exacerbated by climate change that is funded by big banks. And I know you all know that, but I just want to stress again how important it is your work getting out there and advocating, because there's still so many people just trying to meet their basic needs. November 8th, a spark from a mismanaged power company, PG&E, went into unseasonably dry, unseasonably hot conditions and became the world's most costly disaster in 2018. So we have a few things. We have, you know, we're out of relationship with the land, and so we're not managing the forests. We're out of a relationship with the land, and so we're outsourcing our energy needs to a power company that is driven by profit and not by interest in protecting the people or managing the land in a healthy way. And we're out of relationship with the land because we have been burning fossil fuels for generations. That's undeniably changed the climate. And all of that comes together and creates the most costly disaster in 2018, destroying my hometown and my family's home and ultimately taking 86 lives. And I have to say right now that there's far more people that have died after the fire as a result of it. People that have been thrown out of their routines. This is an elderly population that have been thrown into diaspora, not able to meet with each other, not able to have the routine and take care for their needs. And my own family members are among those that are severely declining since the fire. What we saw after the fire was people coming together neighbors helping neighbors. And it's that spirit that we need to see around the world. And I know that you all are a part of it, and that's why you're on this call. You know that there's a bigger calling and that you want to be a part of it. We saw donations pour in from around the world. Seems to be frozen. There we go. I just want to say that the response is not equitable. You know, there's folks that have insurance that are able to meet their needs. They've rebuilt. And some have even fared even better. And there's many, many more who did not have insurance and are still unhoused. The Campfire Collaborative that works with cases has 300 cases a week of folks that are still trying to meet their basic needs. We just had our 4-year anniversary. There's still folks that are unhoused because of the climate crisis. And now here's something really interesting to note, that many of those people have now become what some would call the homeless problem. These are folks that had homes that were renting, but now they're on the streets. And so you can see how all these things are twistedly connected. What we saw after the fire was cleanup crews coming in from around the country, even around the world. When I drove up to Paradise after the fire to try and check on my family's home site, I was blocked by military Hummers with machine guns on the top. And I watched a stream of PG&E trucks go back into Paradise. This is the same company that was responsible for the spark that caused the campfire, and yet they're racing back in to rebuild what was. We need to take a moment of pause for communities to identify their own path forward. That means coming together, talk about what our experience was, make sense of what happened, come up with a shared vision, and take action. After the fire, I photographed nearly 70 families in the ashes of their homes, starting with my parents. This is the face of the climate crisis, my friends. You know this. For many people, it's already here. Those that are at the top in the banks, they will not feel this. They're insulated by their wealth. If they lose a home in a hurricane or a fire, they simply rebuild and move on and continue to protect themselves with their wealth. We must bring the severity of this to them. And that's what you are doing. By going out and taking part in these actions, you're letting them know that this is urgent and that we need to divest from the fossil fuel industry. We need to protect our families and rebuild in ways that honors all life. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your powerful story, Alan. And thank you so much for your leadership and all the work you're doing to rebuild in your community. Sending so much love and healing to you and your family as well. And yeah, your story and Rachel's story from earlier both truly underscore so clearly why we can't give up on this fight to stop the flow of Wall Street dollars to harmful industries that we know have been fueling disasters like Hurricane Sandy and the Paradise Fire. And after learning more about Alan's community and the important work that Regenerating Paradise is doing to help its residents rebuild, I hope you're all ready to donate to support their work. I'm making a final plug for folks to donate now and encourage y'all to also share with your networks. The new link should be dropped in the chat. So please, again, donate. And if you haven't already, I also want to remind folks to sign the Citibank petition that we dropped earlier, the Third Act Pledge. Add your name to the new map that Austin shared about earlier. Add your org if it's not represented on the map. And yeah, gear up to take action all season, especially during shareholder season. Please look out for a roundup of all of these actions and more actions that you can keep taking throughout the year. With that, huge thank you to everyone for joining, and really massive thank you to all of our fantastic speakers. I hope the rest of 2022 is good to you all. Take care. Thank you.